Allusions in Literature. Hey everybody, today's lesson is going to be about allusions in literature and what they are. What do we do when we think we find one, and what do these bring to our text? This is definitely something that you will see next year in 9th grade, and I'm excited to talk to you about them because I think they're kind of fun. So come on, let's go check them out. Okay, so what is an allusion? It's yet another tool in a writer's tool bag for them to use to create meaning. We've been talking about figurative language, we've been talking about characterization, audience, author's purpose, author's craft, all those things the writers do to build in meaning. Allusion is just one more, but it's really powerful, and you'll see that. An allusion is a reference to another, usually well-known character, person, or piece of literature or art. So it's a mention of this other text or work in the middle of something else. So what am I talking about? Well, this here, hopefully you recognize, is the Mona Lisa. Mona Lisa is probably the most famous piece of painting in the world, perhaps. And what's famous about this painting, as I'm sure you know, is the smile. Mona Lisa's smile has perplexed and beguiled art lovers throughout history for hundreds and hundreds of years. And if I was going to refer to this piece of art, like the 2002 movie Mona Lisa Smile did, I'd be using an allusion. Another well-known piece of literature is what some people call it the Torah, some people call it the Old Testament, some people call it the Bible. It is a collection of stories from Christian, Judeo-Christian, Muslim tradition that in the Western world is frequently used as allusion material, references to things that happened in this text. So let me show you a more modern allusion. You may have seen Shrek. And in the movie Shrek, after Shrek and Donkey go and fight the dragon, and they cross this horrible bridge to get to the other side to find the princess, Shrek pats Donkey and he says, "That'll do, Donkey, that'll do." And while it's cute and it's funny, it's actually an allusion. And if you do know the allusion, you probably know exactly what I'm about to show you. In a movie called Babe, there was a little pig named Babe, and there was the sheep herder, and he took Babe to a competition, and Babe wins by just doing everything perfectly. And at the end, Babe looks to his master for some satisfaction, and he says, "That'll do, pig, that'll do." And so in that moment, Shrek, they use that moment to show that sense of loyalty and pride that was apparent in the movie Babe, and they brought it to this moment. And if you have some extra time and you want to see all the different allusions from Shrek to other films, it's really, really cool. There's so many. Okay, another allusion you may know is from Taylor Swift's song, Love Story. Love Story contains lines about Romeo and Juliet, and Romeo and Juliet is perhaps Shakespeare's most famous love story. In Shakespeare's work, Romeo and Juliet are ill-fated lovers, and their circumstances keep them apart. Okay, Taylor Swift sings. Even the video you can see, the balcony.
You were throwing pebbles, and my daddy said stay away from Juliet, and I was crying on the staircase, begging you please don't go. And I said, Romeo, take me somewhere we can be waiting.
Okay, so in that song, it's modern, right? But it's a play on an old story, an old tale about young people who are in love, but it just doesn't work out somehow. That's allusion work. Okay, so my question today is, why do authors use these allusions? Besides being just something that's pretty cool, Writers expect their audience to know these other works. And the meaning in the second text, the one that alludes to something else, just becomes richer and deeper. If I know that Romeo and Juliet were ill-fated teenage lovers, I can also appreciate that that's the situation going on in Taylor Swift's song, that they are encountering some family troubles, and who doesn't have family issues when they're dating someone? But it tells us what kind. Okay, Steinbeck also uses allusions, as all great authors do. Some allusions are direct, and some are indirect. And the indirect ones are a little bit more hard to find, more of a challenge to find. But if you're really well read, you may be able to pick up on these. So I'm going to show you both of those today. Let's start with the direct allusion. So I'm going to read with you a poem called To a Mouse by Robert Burns. And it was written in 1785. And Burns, who's another Scot, we're doing a lot of Scottish things, he dedicated this poem to a mouse on turning up in her nest with the plow, 1785. So this poem was written way back in 1785. Small, crafty, cowering, timorous little beast, oh, what a panic is in your breast. You need not start away so hasty with your hurrying scamper. I would be loath to run and chase you with murdering plow staff. I'm truly sorry man's dominion has broken nature's social union and justifies that ill opinion which makes you startle. At me, your poor, earth-born companion and fellow mortal. I doubt not, sometimes, but you may steal. What then? Poor little beast, you must live. So here we just have two stanzas of the poem. And in the first stanza, you can see that the narrator is speaking to the scared mouse. And the mouse his nest has been overturned by this plow. When the farmer was plowing his land, he pulled up a mouse nest. And in the second stanza here, we can see that the narrator is really sorry that his human activities has disrupted the mouse's life. The man was just going about his farming business, and the mouse happened to be there, and his life was totally disrupted. The poem goes on and says, an odd ear and 24 sheaves is a small request. I will get a blessing with what is left and never miss it. Your small house, too, in ruin. Its feeble walls, the wind are scattering, and nothing now to build a new one. Of course, grass green. And bleak December's winds coming, both bitter and piercing. You saw the fields laid bare and wasted, and weary winter coming fast. And cozy here, beneath the blast you thought to dwell, till crash, the cruel plow passed out through your cell. That small bit heap of leaves and stubble has cost you many a weary nibble. Now you are turned out for all your trouble without house or holding, to endure the winter's sleety dribble and hoar frost cold. Okay, so these stanzas here are clearly showing us that this narrator is lamenting the difficulty this mouse is now going to have to face as a result of the plowing. He says in that stanza that you see at the top of the page that your small house, you're going to have to build a new one of new coarse green grass, and December is coming and it's cold and you were all cozy up in here and you thought you'd stay here all winter until I smashed up your house. And you can tell that the narrator feels bad about what he's done. But little mouse, you are not alone. Improving foresight may be vain. The best laid schemes of mice and men go often askew and leave us nothing but grief and pain for promised joy. Still, you are blessed compared with me. The present only touches you, but oh, I backward cast my eye on prospects dreary and forward, though I guess and fear. So that's the end of the poem. Did you see the illusion? The illusion's right there in this 1/3 line of this stanza. The best laid schemes of mice and men go often askew. Okay, schemes in this line means plans. The best laid plans of mice and men go often askew, and askew means not straight. They go off on the wrong side. The narrator is telling this mouth that even the very best plans that are laid out often fall apart, leaving us nothing but grief and pain, right, for the promised joy that we had. Does that sound familiar? Sound like any book you might know? And in this last stanza, besides giving this illusion well, it's not an illusion here, but Steinbeck's title is the illusion, and the story itself is an allusion to this very situation. In this last stanza, the narrator contemplates the cursed nature of the human condition. Mice, they don't really think about what has happened in the past. Mice operate on instinct, as do our dogs, as do the trees and the branches and the leaves, and none of these have the consciousness that we have. We know as humans, we understand, we can comprehend what we could have had. And because of that, according to this poet, we are cursed, and it gives us fear, it gives us anxiety, it gives us sadness, because we have hindsight and we can regret. As I wrote here, we suffer because we know what could have been. Again, does that sound familiar? Hello. Okay, so Steinbeck is really thinking about this idea. What can we control, we as human beings in our lives? You know, it's remarkable that we're at home right now listening to a video because we should be in school. Who on earth could have seen this coming? Our pandemic. And Steinbeck was also fascinated by this idea. What can we possibly control? And what is up to Mother Nature? Nature, controls quite a lot. So in this poem, To a Mouse, poet Robert Burns, hundreds of years earlier, had the same thought as Steinbeck's. These mice, they were just doing their mousy thing, and along comes a force greater than they and stirs up and turns up their nest. Hopefully you can see this reflected in Of Mice and Men, and that's the illusion work. Okay, what's a little more challenging, but I think once we talk a little bit, or I talk, is this indirect illusion, this idea of my brother's keeper. As you read the book and as you finished up, you realized that George was obviously taking care of Lenny, and while they weren't blood brothers, they had a bond. This idea of sacrificing in order to keep or to help or to help raise someone is a burden that George takes on. And why does he do that? And as we've talked and as you've mentioned in your annotations and your thoughts, it's because he loves him. So that idea of my brother's keeper, it originally came from the book of Genesis. You may be familiar with this story of Cain and Abel. And Cain and Abel were the first kids born on earth, according to Christian, Jewish, and Muslim mythology, that these two boys were the first two boys born to their parents, Adam and Eve. I'm going to read this with you, and we'll reflect a little bit on this. Again, you might be really familiar with the story, or you might be reading this for the very first time. So this is from the book of Genesis. Now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord, meaning that she had a child with Adam. And again, she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a worker of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. The Lord said to Cain, why are you angry, and why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. Cain spoke to Abel his brother. And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. So Cain was jealous of the Lord's acceptance and preference towards his brother, and he was so jealous and angry that he killed his brother. So it's the first murder on the books in this mythology. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel, your brother? He said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? And the Lord said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground, and now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. Then the Lord said to him, not so. If anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest any who found him should attack him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. So that's just a really small excerpt that of the book of Genesis. And every time I reread segments of scripture of the Bible, I'm always surprised how short it is. I always expect these stories to have these, all these details and pages of description, but it's not written like that at all. It's so interesting. I guess I must infuse that stuff in my own mind as I'm thinking of these stories. Anyway, you can see that there's a lot of similarities and overlap between of mice and men here, right? George most certainly is Lenny's keeper, and while he does kill him, not because of anger, George's situation is a little bit deeper there, different there. He is cursed now to wander alone and make his way, and who knows if his dream will ever come true. One thing that I think is so cool that I have to show you is this idea of east of Eden. Steinbeck was really interested in this story. Another one of his novels is titled East of Eden. And the idea of mankind being kicked out of paradise really fascinated John Steinbeck. East of Eden is my all-time favorite book, ever. And if you like Steinbeck, you should definitely check that out. Okay, so in this story from the book of Genesis, Steinbeck asks us, are we our brother's keeper? Okay, it goes from beyond just George and Lenny to all of us. And I put this picture of someone with a mask because it's so timely. Are we responsible for keeping others safe in this really, really difficult time in our lives and in our families, parents' lives? What's our responsibility for other human beings, particularly for those who may be weaker or isolated or mistreated, right? Lenny was weak. He was strong, yet he was weak because he could not function as an adult. Why is it that George cares for Lenny in such a self-sacrificing ways? Are his choices heroic, or are they simply human? And those questions I can't answer, only you can answer for yourself, right? We will each have a different idea, and that's the power of illusion work. It is so cool. It gets us to a place we would never be beyond just plot and characterization. Okay, so why does this matter? I always want to end with why on earth does any of this illusion stuff matter? Well, as we think, there's Rodin's The Thinker. It has roots in philosophy, literature, and as you move, you're in the stage of your life where you're going to be reading things that mean a lot more than things that you've read in the past. Literature asks us deep philosophical questions that our fellow mankind has grappled with for thousands of years. Every human who's ever lived on earth has had to think about, am I my brother's keeper? Am I responsible for this other person? And it asks us to do some thinking. It also applies to all of us. We're certainly going to grapple with these issues in our lives. You might not have someone that you're keeping at this part of your life, but you will for sure. Might be a cousin, a friend, a spouse, a sibling, a child, who knows? It could be even people in the greater world at large. Am I responsible for the poor? Am I responsible for just myself? Am I responsible for those who can't help themselves or can't stand up for themselves? Again, you're going to be grappling with these issues, and this is the reason why I devoted my entire life to teaching English. Our thoughts define how we view the world. Okay, our thoughts. Now, we're taught what to think by the people that surround us, by our families, our grandparents, our aunts, our uncles, our friends, our teachers. But it's really up to you to decide, well, what do you think? We only truly become our own person when we develop our own set of ideas and beliefs. If you accept everything that everyone tells you, this is the way you should think, you're really not your own person. And that's what's so exciting about growing up. Okay, so back to our essay. Done with the big philosophy talk, Miss Walter. As you can tell in my voice, I am like so excited about this. I could do this lesson all day. All right, so what? Again, well, you could comment on the human condition when you write this essay eventually in your conclusion. You can dive into the pain, just like that little mouse in Robert Burns's To a Mouse, losing the dream, right? The dream of the rabbits. These men, they lose everything, everything. Lenny loses his life. And George, he's cursed to roam the world lonely and alone. And so sad. You can connect the world of Lenny and George to the book of Genesis or the poem. You could do that in the introduction. I know you've given in your introduction already, but why not try, to weave this in? And figure out what you think yourself about the way we exist in this world. Do you think that we should care for others? Do you believe humanity is cursed with memory? Or do you think it's a gift? In Burns's poem, he clearly thought it was a curse, but maybe he thinks it's different. And these are not easy questions. They are the questions, though, that thinkers ask themselves. And like I've said all year, my job is to get you to think. All right? I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I talked so much, but I think it was a lesson worth hearing. And have fun looking for allusions in the text, and go to do a Google search. I think it's a BuzzFeed that has all the Shrek references, and they're hilarious. All right, have a great day. Bye.